Greetings and welcome to another Diamond Dave retrospective in which I, Diamond Dave, will be reviewing all of my past work during my years on YouTube. In this video, I shall be reviewing my 2012 action movie, Brothers in Arms. So before I get into reviewing the film, I'm going to talk a bit about how this particular film came to be, as I do in my other Diamond Dave retrospectives. I give a bit of background information on how the project came to be before I actually get into the review. So bear with me. So this was now summer of 2012, and this was my third big action movie that I made with Ross McConaughey, who helped me make Enforcer Butch and Vigilante in the two previous summers. So this was the third installment in what I like to call the David Aiken, Ross McConaughey action summer trilogy, because for three consecutive summers between 2010 and 2012 we made three big action movies: Enforcer Butch, Vigilante, and this, Brothers in Arms. So at this stage, Ross was studying in England. He went to university in Leeds, if I remember correctly. That was the place that he went to pursue higher education. I myself was in college too, but I stayed here in Northern Ireland to pursue my studies. But while he was living and studying in England, Ross showed his classmates my work and the things that me and him did together, and he built up a little cult following for me over there, so I'm very grateful to him for that. I got to know some of his English friends over there who were very delighted to meet me because they saw all the stuff I did over the years. But there was one particular classmate who was so impressed by what Ross showed him that he actually wanted to fly to Northern Ireland to be in this film. A lovely guy called Moen Hussein. And it's really Ross got in touch with me whenever he came home from England of summer 2012 and told me, listen, Dave, I've got a friend from my university who wants to be in our next movie, and he's coming over to Northern Ireland for a trip. And I felt very humbled that this guy from England who hardly knows me, he liked my movies so much, he actually wanted to fly from England to Northern Ireland just to be in my new movie. And it makes me feel very good about myself because I'm not famous, I'm not a big international star. I wish I was, but this really humbled me that Ross showed this person my work, and he he wanted to come over to Northern Ireland to star in the new film. So even though, as I've said, I'm not famous or internationally well known, this made me feel pretty good. Guy from England wants to star in the next Diamond Dave production. I met him briefly the previous year in 2011 and we got on very well. And now, a year later, after meeting me briefly in 2011, he came to Northern Ireland and really wanted to play the main part in my new film. So I was more than happy to oblige him. So I got started on writing the new big action movie for 2012, knowing that this guy was going to come over to Northern Ireland for a short trip and he wanted to play a part in this film. So I went ahead and started writing it. So Ross sort of said to me, well, you've already written Enforcer Butch and Vigilante, and in both those films it's about the good guy going after the bad guy, sort of the protagonist chasing the antagonist. In Enforcer Butch, Butch is assigned to go after Big Bad Dave, and in Vigilante, Steve chases after Vince Carter because he kidnapped his sister. So whenever I was starting to form the plan in my head for this new film, Ross suggested to me, why don't you change the formula a bit? Instead of the good guy chasing after the bad guy, have it the heroes being on the run and the antagonist chasing after the heroes instead, like a stalker chase movie. So with those things in mind, knowing that that Moen was coming from England for a trip and he wanted to be in this film, and Ross's suggestion to change the formula up a wee bit about two characters being on the run from a bad guy, I came up with the idea that this would be about a soldier returning home from his tour in Afghanistan, and he comes home to find out the bad news that his comrades have been killed by a mysterious, evil, sinister figure. Can you guess who plays that said sinister figure? Big Bad Dave, Vince Carter. It's me again. I'm the bad guy yet again because I love being evil. But I digress. So the story is basic. I came up with this plot. Moen plays this soldier. He comes back from Afghanistan, finds out that his comrades have been mysteriously murdered, and there's this one last surviving member of his team sort of living a hermit's lifestyle, and he goes to him to find out what's going on. So with that concept of two soldiers being stalked, having to work together as a team to find out who this evil man is, and then ends up being chased and pursued by him. This is sort of like a buddy movie, two reluctant protagonists having to team together to survive the evil that's chasing them. So this is Brothers in Arms, and it was uploaded on the 8th of August 2012. So this intro sequence shows Moen playing the hero in a flashback sequence which is supposed to take place in Afghanistan. This is showing his character escaping the clutches of the enemy and trying to survive this battlefield with explosions going on around him. I wasn't there whenever Ross and him recorded this sequence, but this was actually a beach not far from where I live, and so they decided that can double for Afghanistan. This beach in Northern Ireland can double for Afghanistan. The magic of telling stories and movie making. And as you can see, when he edited it, Ross pulled out all the stops to make this particular film as cinematic and explosive as possible, because Enforcer Butch was very well presented and Vigilante was very well presented, but the cinematography ramps right up for this one in terms of the visual, the quality of the video, the music, and special effects. And spoiler warning, there are a lot of explosions in this film. So that was the introduction that takes place 4 years prior to the events of the film, and after the title cards Brothers in Arms, we have a time lapse to the present, 4 years after the intro sequence. Hello. Lovely day, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
So, I see you've been on the battlefield then.
Oh, yeah.
War is hell. My grandfather was in World War II.
Really?
Yes, he was a great man. He always said that in war you don't make friends but brothers. Brothers who will lay their lives down for you no matter what.
I suppose.
So where are your brothers? Corporal Dan Murphy?
Unfortunately, most were killed. Only a handful survived. I was captured by escapes.
Where are they now?
I'm not sure.
Maybe you should track them down. It helped my grandfather.
Well, thanks.
I'll be seeing you around. So now the film is set in the present, and we have Moen's character, Corporal Dan Murphy, safely back home, just looking at his medal on the beach, and my character comes up to him and I come across being quite friendly, and we have a bit of dialogue to set up the plot and the characters. Exposition! Yes, exposition to sort of set up these characters and what their goals are and what their arc is. So Moen talks about he was captured and he escaped, and you saw that in the pre-title scene. And I saw my character speaks to him, alluding to I talk about my grandfather being in World War II, which is actually true in real life because my grandfather in real life did serve in the war, so I thought it would be cool to implement that into my character for this film. And I'm sort of having this facade that I'm trying to help him and try to understand him, but it is a facade, and the true colours of my character do come out later on in the film, what his agenda is, and what his goal is and why he is so friendly towards Corporal Dan Murphy. Why is he coming up to talk to him? Why does he want to get to know him and talk to him about war? There was quite a lot more dialogue and exposition in the script, but for a number of reasons, the biggest reason being the 10-minute time limit that YouTube has at the time, which I've spoken about in previous retrospectives, mostly because of that rule at the time that I couldn't upload a video that was longer than 10 minutes long. We did have to cut out some exposition and dialogue that served as character development for me and Moen and Ross for our respective characters. And a funny story about the medal that Moen's character has. Obviously, in the story, that's supposed to be his military medal for his services in Afghanistan, but in real life, those were actually just plastic toy Olympic medals that we bought from the local shop for about £1 or something. But in hindsight, we could have used something else for his medal, because my grandfather, who passed away in 2010, had an OBE medal, and my family inherited this OBE medal after he died, and here it is. This is my grandfather's OBE medal. And hindsight being 2020, you see what I did there? I don't know why we didn't use this instead, because this is a real authentic medal, and instead of using this, we just bought this cheap plastic Olympic medal from a toy shop. So in hindsight, I don't know why we didn't use this instead, because this could have been used as a prop for Moen's character, Corporal Dan Murphy. This could have been his medal that he was looking at, just to give that extra authenticity. And I also feel, in hindsight, that we could have used it for two things. We could have used it both for Moen's character, his medal, but we could have implemented it into my character too. Obviously, in the story, not having it being two different medals, one belonging to Corporal Dan Murphy and one belonging to my character, but in the scenes that it wasn't seen being held by Moen, we could have had it sort of sewn in onto my three-piece suit, because my character's backstory is that my grandfather served in World War II, and I was obsessed with being in the military, my character that is, and it would have been cool just to show that I was wearing my granddad's medal on my suit, just to show a bit of personality and a little extra dimension to my character and what angle my character was going for. But just hindsight, looking back on it, just a couple of things that we could have done differently and bits that were chopped out for timing reasons. And as you can see, I am not wearing my glasses in this film. I wear glasses in real life because I'm short-sighted, but in this film I'm not wearing my glasses. But that is a detail that I will elaborate on later on in this review as to why I'm not wearing glasses in this film. So after taking my character's advice to try and track down his former comrades, Dan, as plays by Moen, goes ahead and tries to look for his former comrades, only to find out that all but one have been mysteriously murdered, and he's about to visit Kenneth Thomas, as played by Ross.
Is this Sergeant Kenneth Thomas?
Who's asking?
Corporal Dan Murphy.
What do you want?
Do you know we're the only 2 soldiers left in Regiment 13?
For now?
What do you mean?
Listen, Corporal. You and I will soon be joining the rest of them.
What's happening?
There's a man. An evil man. A man far more twisted than any man we fought in the war. A man so evil, they say he bleeds poison.
And he's coming after us.
You're lucky he hasn't already.
We've got to stop him.
We? I don't think so.
Why not?
First of all, there is no we. Secondly, I've seen enough death to last a lifetime. My time is up, it's over.
What about our friends from the war? The ones that risked their lives for us? They've been murdered. All we can do is sit back and accept your fate.
And what do I have to fight for?
Chance to avenge your brothers.
Here we are introduced to Kenneth Thomas, as played by Ross, who is the last surviving member of Dan Murphy's regiment. They're the 2 sole survivors because all of their friends and comrades have been killed by an evil man. Who's me, by the way? Spoiler alert. Okay, so there was quite a lot of backstory and dialogue in the script that was omitted from the film. And unfortunately, unlike Vigilante, I no longer have the original script for Brothers in Arms, so I can't remember how much dialogue was omitted, but there was supposed to be more information in this dialogue scene between Moen and Ross discussing who this mysterious man is, who has been stalking and killing military personnel. But I suppose, again, it was down to the 10-minute time limit on YouTube, and we wanted to accelerate the story and get onto the action, that we had to cut out what I think should exposition that should have been left in, just to make the story a bit more three-dimensional and in-depth, but that's just my subjective opinion. I personally feel we could have done with a bit more dialogue and exposition for this scene, but that's just subjective on my part in terms of wanting to tell the story. But I think a good enough amount of dialogue was said in this scene just to try and paint a picture of what's happening in this story. And my character doesn't actually have a name in this movie. In the script, he does have a name. He's just called the Diamond. A very inventive name. But I'm never actually referred to on screen as that name. So in this film, because we had to cut out some exposition and dialogue, my character remains nameless. So Ross sort of portraying Kenneth Thomas as this foreshadowing pathos character, sort of this recluse, that was ad-libbed by him in terms of making the personality for his character. I never told him really how I wanted him to portray the character of Kenneth Thomas. I sort of let him do his own thing, so he decided to go this direction of sort of being this ominous character full of pathos and clearly suffering from trauma from being at war, and sort of having this foreboding personality. There's an evil man out there. They say he bleeds poison. He's that evil. He sort of reminds me of the crazy old guy from Friday the 13th Part 3. I think it's Friday the 13th Part 3, in which the teenagers who are going up to Camp Crystal Lake, they bump into this old guy on their journey up to Camp Crystal Lake, and he sort of gives them this ominous warning. They say there's a masked serial killer called Jason Voorhees. They say he wears a hockey mask. And they pay no attention. And for those of you who have seen the Friday the 13th movies, you can sort of get what I'm talking about here. But it was good that Ross put this little unique spin on his character, that this is a guy who's clearly been through a lot of shit, and it's maybe caused him to go a little bit crazy, be a loner, sort of live this hermit lifestyle and have this pathos personality that he sees no point in continuing to live, and he's sort of reserved to the fact that he probably will get killed by this evil man who bleeds poison, that he just doesn't care anymore. And there's Moen trying to desperately encourage him to stand up and fight and try and avenge their fallen comrades and get this bastard who has been murdering all of their friends. So yeah, it's that sort of, he plays this reluctant character, and he does require a bit of encouragement to join Corporal Dan Murphy on the quest to discover who the killer is and to stop him. Now, that is not a real moustache, by the way. Ross decided he wanted to have a moustache for this film, but because Moen was only in Northern Ireland for a few weeks and we only had a set amount of time to get this film made, we could hardly sort of just sit there and wait a couple of weeks for Ross to naturally grow a moustache. So instead, he just bought he decided to buy a prosthetic moustache, a fake one, just to stick onto his upper lip like this. And there were a couple of problems with that because it kept falling off. And throughout the film, if you look closely, he's trying his best both while he's acting to keep the damn thing stuck to his face so it doesn't keep wobbling and falling off. The building that we used in this scene to sort of show it as being Kenneth Thomas's house, that was actually a garage. It was Ross's garage in his back garden, which is quite big, so in film we could make it look like it was just a house that he was living in, but it's actually a garage. And this garage we used in all three of our big action summer movies between 2010 and 2012. The garage was used in Enforcer Butch, in the scene that Butch interrogates Big Bad Dave's henchman. It's used again in Vigilante in the brief scene that Ross answers the phone to me whenever I call him as Vince Carter to say, "Pledge your allegiance to me again," and Ross responds, "Oh, don't worry, Vince, I'll see you very soon." That was that's how it was used in Vigilante, the garage, and now the garage is used again in this film, both to substitute, both to be the exterior of Kenneth Thomas's house, and then we use the interior of it again later on for an upcoming torture scene.
Anybody there? That's it.
Quick! It's me! Come on, Dan, let's go, quick, come on!
So now Dan Murphy's been caught by the evil stalker. So, in this film, I wanted to wear a mask, both because it bore a lot of relevance to the story for me to wear a mask, because my identity is supposed to be, for the most part, hidden throughout the film, so for a narrative reason I had to disguise my face. And there is a cut line from the opening scene in which I'm talking to Moen that I allude to. I inherited something from my grandfather that he used during the war. That was written in the script, but obviously it didn't make it into the final film. This line that I said that I allude to possessing something that my granddad had during the war. So I ordered myself a gas mask off Amazon, very cheap, for me to wear throughout the film, because I sort of had this cool image wearing this gas mask. But there were a couple of problems with it. In that scene that Moen is tied up and shouting for help, as you can see, I'm wearing the mask in it. But we actually had more recorded, because I verbally taunt him and laugh and really verbally attack him and insult him. But the mask was really, really tight to wear. It was very uncomfortable, and you couldn't make out what I was saying from under the mask. And I could only wear the damn thing for a certain amount of time before I had to take it off because I just could not breathe. I couldn't breathe under it, so unfortunately I would have liked to have used the mask a lot more in this film than I ended up using it. But just practically speaking, I couldn't wear it for that many scenes because I could hardly breathe. In fact, the scene that you saw there of Moen on the chair and me sort of holding him at gunpoint whilst wearing the mask, as I halfway through filming that scene, I literally just ripped the mask off and took about a minute to breathe and told Ross, let me catch my breath before I put this on again so we could continue the scene. So I actually have it here all these years later, and I thought it's a very cool prop and a very cool mask for me to wear for the film, but unfortunately, because it was just such an uncomfortable thing to wear, I couldn't use it as much as I wanted to in the end. But even so, we did have a lot of fun, the three of us together. I mean, there was me wearing my three-piece suit, wearing the gas mask. You had Moen wearing his vest and a wee head band, a bandana, I think it's called. That was his contribution to sort of his physical appearance of the character, to give that sort of tough, hardened look, and leather jackets. And Ross with his all denim gear and fake moustache. It was a lot of fun. We were living the dream. We were three filmmakers having fun during the summer making this movie. And again, the garage that I mentioned earlier, that's the interior of it for this scene. And the final time we used it in Enforcer Butch Vigilante and this for these scenes. So whenever Kenneth Thomas, Ross's character, has obviously has a change of heart from the previous scene when he just wanted to be left alone and has now come to the rescue to save Moen from my evil clutches. And there was a very clever piece of subtle direction that Ross was doing there whenever he was freeing Moen. He was sort of disguising direction through his dialogue, because his lines were, Dan, it's me, come on, let's go, run, 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 while he was physically freeing him from his restraints and sort of leading him to get, he was delivering his dialogue, but at the same time, through that dialogue, he was giving a little bit of disguised direction to sort of help Moen know what he was supposed to be doing and where to physically move and what to do.
We'll be needing this.
So after that scene that the two soldiers get away, this is one of the things I love so much about filmmaking, because where I was supposed to have kept him prisoner, it was shot in Ross's garage, but the exterior of where I took him to hold him prisoner, we drove to the other side of town there's an industrial estate in the town that I live in. We drove from Ross's house all the way to the other side of town to this industrial estate to make it look as if that that was outside the place that I held Moen prisoner, because we go from that scene that he's held prisoner was just shot in a garage in somebody's back garden, and then we drove to a place where there are a lot of warehouses and disused buildings to sort of simulate and pretend that that's where he was taken to in the film, and where I hide out, where my character hides out. But that's one of the wonderful things about filmmaking is literal world building, because you can film in one physical space, travel someplace else, and make it look as if that the two areas are connected and related, that, oh, that place was actually in somebody's back garden, but in the film we make it look as if that he was actually taken away to a disused warehouse by combining the interior of the garage and then showing shots of disused warehouses on the other side of town, which is in real life about a 2-mile drive at the most from where we shot the prisoner scene in the garage. So you're literally building your own world. You're connecting all these unrelated places in real life together for the purpose of telling a story. In film, one area can be connected to this area, even though in real life they're far apart. We actually drove to many different parts of town to film a lot of the exterior scenes for this film. We were on beaches, we were in somebody's garden, we were in an industrial estate, and in the finale coming up we were in a country park. So it's world building, make your own little world. One of the pleasures of making movies, just building your own wee world out of things. Anyway, I like how I stalk them in this. I've got this big fuck off AK-47 like gun, which is a toy. It's a toy. And I'm wearing the gas mask. I was sort of trying to go for a horror film vibe for my character, sort of like those masked serial killers from horror movies like Friday the 13th. You have Jason Voorhees with his hockey mask. You have the Halloween movies, Michael Myers with his white rubber mask. That's what I was going for my character in this, to sort of play this masked crazy guy and a stalker, a bit like Jason, Michael Myers, Leatherface, sort of characters like that, but with a big gun instead of a knife. So we're heading on to the last part of the movie now.
We're all clear. I think he's gone.
Thanks for saving me about that, brother.
Brother? I am not your brother.
What the hell is wrong with you?
Leave it!
Come on, man, what's wrong?
What's wrong? What's wrong? I saved the lives of 16 innocent people doing my duty, and you got the medal for courage and bravery? That medal should be mine!
Kenny. The medal. It doesn't matter. It's a cheap piece of metal. You don't need that to remind you of how you served your country or how brave you were.
Yeah, but you did.
So a bit of development there, a bit of exposition. Kenneth resents Dan because Dan got a medal for his wartime duties and he didn't, and he felt he was owed a medal for all the things that he did and went through in his wartime duties. So it shows that while he does want to help Dan and try and stop this madman who's targeting military personnel, there's still that bit of reluctance and bitterness in his character, which sort of makes him a bit like Han Solo in a way. And what I mean by that is that he's a reluctant hero. He doesn't want to be in this situation. He doesn't necessarily want to play heroics. He just feels forced and obligated into doing so. But at the same time, deep down, there's a small part of him that genuinely wants to help and stop the evil. So again, I was talking about world building there. So after we filmed that sequence at the industrial estate, we drove to the other side of town to a country park to film this finale. But we made it look as if that the two areas were connected, that the industrial estate and the country park were just a few steps away from each other, when in reality there's about 3-5 miles between them. But I digress. So on this day, when we were driving down to the country park to film the finale of this film, there was a terrible rainstorm that occurred while we were driving down. It started to rain, and it rained heavier and heavier and heavier, and obviously we couldn't film in the rain because that would damage the equipment, and it just wasn't practical to do that. So we arrive at the park, and it's still raining down a storm, and I honestly didn't think it was going to go away. The three of us, Ross drove, by the way. So the three of us, Ross, Moen, and myself, we all sat in the car with all of these film props and equipment, just sitting there waiting for this damn rainstorm to finally stop. Now, I am a very passionate filmmaker and I love to make films. I like to make the best I can, and I like to get it done as quickly as I can, but still get the best results out of it. But even after about half an hour sitting in the car and it was still raining, even I was starting to doubt, I really don't want to leave, but maybe we should probably wait another day or so to do this again. But to Ross's credit, he insisted that we continued waiting in the car, and after about 45 minutes sitting in the car, the rain finally stopped, and the sun was splitting the clouds that day afterwards. It was showering down with rain, and then all of a sudden the sun comes out, splits the clouds, and it's all lovely and sunny. You wouldn't think from seeing that scene there in the forest that it had recently just had a big monsoon coming down. But that's the weather in Northern Ireland, and Billy Connolly made a joke about Scotland's weather because Northern Ireland's weather and Scotland's weather systems are quite similar. You can get all seasons all in one day, from hail, sleet to sunshine and clear skies. So the bit where Ross shouts, "Leave it!" Moen got a case of the giggles and started corpsing quite a bit. He just could not stop laughing. There was something he just thought the way Ross shouted, "Leave it!" He just thought it was funny, and for about 5 minutes he just couldn't compose himself. God help him, and we were trying to fill him, but he just kept giggling because of he just thought that the way Ross shouted his line was amusing. So eventually he managed to get his composure back and continue on with the scene. So now we're coming up to the final fight. So now my character is on to them and I'm hell-bent on killing them. I really love the after effects that Ross put into this. I don't remember what editing software he used to put all of these effects in, but I'm going to assume that it must have been Adobe After Effects. Maybe not. He was the one who edited it and put in all the special effects. So I just love how this turned out. Me with this big gun, which in real life is just a harmless, empty plastic toy like this, and he put in all the big blasting effects to make it look as though I'm really out to get them. To put a bit more substance and exposition on this scene, originally in the script, before they ran into the big grass field, Kenneth Thomas said something along the lines of, "This is a minefield that were set up by the Diamond." The Diamond is my character, by the way. In the script, I wrote that my character had deliberately set up a big trap for them as they were running away from me, because my character had the foresight to know that they were going to try and escape me by running through this field. So I planted landmines in this big grassy area that they ran into in order to trap them. And if you look at the scene, I'm not shooting at them as they run away from me. I'm deliberately and meticulously shooting at the ground to set the mines off to make them explode. That it was in the script and that's what it was supposed to happen, but because, as I said, we didn't have the time to put in certain lines of dialogue, I think it's a bit unclear as to why there were so many explosions and why I deliberately lured them into this field. But it was really funny because this was a public place that we recorded this finale in. It was a country park, and whenever you see the shot of me walking up, chasing them with the gun like this, you can actually see cars behind me moving and parking. So for these sequences, there were only 3 of us. There was me, Moen, and Ross. So Ross had to play Kenneth Thomas, but he also had to man the camera. So the shots that the two of them are running through the fields up towards the camera, not only did Ross have to act as his character, Kenneth Thomas, but every time we were about to shoot a scene, he had to get the tripod out, fix the camera to it, and put it up to a proper level to get the shots. And then he would press on the record button and then go in front of the camera to assume his role. He played a dual role as both an actor and a cameraman for this film. And this particular sequence in which they are running away from me, I'm shooting at them and trying to blow them up with the landmines that I set in the field. Ross walks all the way to the other end of the field, put the tripod up, cranked it up to the level to have all of us in shot, put the camera on it, checked it, clicks the button to record, and both him and Moen had to walk all the way back to the other end of the field whilst the camera was recording, and I was still standing like this in my position with the gun, and then they would run again towards the camera, pretending to escape me whilst trying to defend themselves, and then physically fling themselves up in the air to give the illusion that they had been caught in an explosion. So there was a lot of physicality in this movie, so he had to set the camera up, walk all the way back to the start, and then run all the way back again for this particular sequence. I also think the way it was shot as well, and especially whenever the after effects are added in, it really adds on to the desperation of the hero's plight. There's this psychopath wearing a gas mask, chasing and running after them, armed with this big gun and firing at them. So them running through this big field with all the explosions going off, and given that they literally threw their bodies into it, they jumped up in the air and twisted and contorted in all different ways to simulate themselves being caught in a hypothetical explosion that wasn't there. So it was a very physical film in terms of the acting and the setup for each scene.
You?
Yes, me.
Why did you talk to me on the beach?
I always like to know who my victims are before I kill them.
Bastard! Deliberately encouraged me to contact my friends, knowing they'd been killed by your hand. You're sick!
Indeed.
But why did you kill them?
Why? Why? To prove my superiority. Soldiers are trained to kill. They are crafted for combat and made to fight, and I managed to outsmart and kill all of them. If I can kill trained killers, that puts me up above them as the superior one.
Kenneth! Settle this like real men.
With pleasure, Dan Murphy. So, the big reveal, I take the mask off, and it was me all along, and Dan recognises me from the beach, the kind man who walked up to him and was all friendly and trying to sympathise with him. It was me all along. So, as I said at the beginning of this review, I do not wear glasses throughout this film. The reason for that was because I was wearing my glasses under the mask, but because the mask was so tight and fixed to my face, whenever I took the mask off, the glasses would come off my face along with it. And if you look closely at this shot, after I take the mask off, you can see the legs of my glasses sticking out from inside the mask. I was just unable to remove the mask without taking my glasses off along with it. So I decided, for continuity reasons, to act in this film without my glasses, even though I do have sight problems. I just thought it would be unusual if my character's wearing glasses in one scene when he's not wearing the mask, and then in another scene after my character takes the mask off, he's suddenly not wearing glasses. So from the beginning I decided I should probably just go this entire film sans glasses, because when I took the mask off, it just dragged the glasses off my face. So I just made the decision to not wear my glasses at all in this film. So the exposition here between Moen and myself is supposed to serve as a bit of a background to my character and what my character's goal and sort of plan is. Because in the script I did write quite a bit for my character in terms of his background. And if you compare this film to the likes of Enforcer Butch and Vigilante, I'm not on screen that often. Throughout this film, I'm mostly an unseen presence. I'm only seen at the beginning briefly, and here at the end I'm fully revealed. So I wanted to give a bit of background to my character, because Moen, as Dan Murphy, asks my character, why did I talk to him on the beach? And I sort of say, I always like to know who my victims are before I kill them. And Moen puts two and two together, sort of saying that I deliberately encouraged him to contact his former comrades, knowing that they were already dead because of me, and just saying that I'm a very sick man for doing it. And then whenever he asks me why I did what I did, I sort of go off on this little rant to try and prove myself that I'm better than them, because my character is supposed to have a bit of an inferiority complex, feeling that he has to prove himself as a worthy opponent by targeting military personnel. But there was a bit more in the script that we had to cut out, again for time constraints. Basically, my character's backstory in this film was that my character tried to join the army, but was expelled for being mentally unstable, because, as you can see in the film, my character is quite loopy. So, feeling a lot of bitterness, my character just sort of goes insane and goes off on this killing spree, deliberately killing soldiers as revenge for not being accepted into the army. So we unfortunately we did have to cut that backstory out, but we sort of allude to it a bit through the dialogue between Moan and myself in this scene. Also, if you look closely at Moan's face, you'll see that there's a bit of a purple blotch just on his face. That was actually a felt tip marking that we drew on his face to give him that beaten up look, because earlier on in the film I break into his house and punch him out, and then I take him prisoner. So a little bit of felt tip pen drawing on his face just to simulate bruising.
You killed my friend!
I killed your brother. Game set. Oh shit!
Match.
I'm very proud of this final fight scene between Moan and myself, and all the years that I've been making movies and acting, this is definitely the most physical scene I've ever done as an actor, because as you can see, me and Moan are really going for each other in this scene. In fact, there was one part of the fight where you see me kicking him, and obviously we were pretending, we were acting, we weren't fighting for real, but that bit where I'm sort of kicking him while he's lying on the ground, in real life, one of my kicks did accidentally connect. I did accidentally kick Moan in real life unintentionally, but I found when I took my shoe off later on after filming, I found that my toenail was bleeding because I kicked him that hard accidentally. So I did more damage to myself than I did him because my toenail was bleeding after kicking him. Moan must be made of steel. And the funny thing is that obviously if we were fighting in real life, Moan would flatten me. I couldn't fight my way out of a paper bag, but I like that illusion that I'm able to hold my own against him, even though he's bigger and stronger than I am. But we had a lot of fun doing that fight scene. But because Ross's character was off screen, he was too busy sort of lying there dying. Because Ross didn't need to be on screen for this one-on-one fight scene between Moan and myself, he recorded this fight scene for us, and the footage, I would say, is very heroic. It's very well filmed, and I'm very proud of this fight scene. Now, this was actually quite a difficult scene for me to do because, as I've said in past videos, I have autism, but along with autism, I also have something else called dyspraxia, and I think dyspraxia is common in autistic people. And basically, dyspraxia is something in which you're very sensitive. It makes you very sensitive to touch, physical touch, and noise. I'm very flinchy because of it, and I've never been to a live concert in my life because dyspraxia makes the senses a lot more sensitive than they should be for the one who has it. So for me to be able to do a scene like this with this amount of physicality, really getting into it, was quite a big leap for someone like me to do with my sensitivity problems. And I love the way Moen finishes me off. I think I have him cornered, and I get out another gun, game, set, and he kicks me in the balls and then pushes me on top of one of my own landmines. And I just realise that I'm about to die, and I go, "Oh shit!" and I explode. And I am so proud that Ross put in the infamous Wilhelm scream whenever I die, because if you listen, you hear that famous sound effect, that famous scream that's used in a lot of movies, sort of the Wilhelm scream sound effects. So I appreciate that he put that in, and I'm one of many actors who has had that sound effects put over me. Now, in real life, whenever Moen went up to kick me, he only just tapped the gun out of my hand to disarm me. But because of how it was shot from the angle in which it was recorded from, it looked as if that he kicks me in the balls. So whenever he tapped the gun out of my hand, I sold it that I was kicked in the balls, pretending to have been kicked in my vital areas. So it's just the way the angle was done. It made it look as if they kicked me in the balls, and I sold it as that. But even though I am defeated, in a way I win, but I also lose, because unfortunately, before the fight, I fatally wound Ross's character, and he's lying there dying.
This is for you, brother.
Aww, quite a sad ending, really, because I shot him in the chest and he was dying, and in death he finally gets the acknowledgement for his war efforts that he always wanted. Moen gives him the medal, and Kenneth gives a final salute and dies as a result of me shooting him in the chest. And it's sort of sad for Moen's character as well, because now he's alone. He is truly alone. He is now the only survivor of his regiment, because all the other ones were murdered by my character. And at the beginning of this film, it was just him and Ross's character left as the two survivors from their regiment. And now, with Ross's character being killed off, Moen as Dan Murphy is now alone now. So it's a slightly dark and melancholic ending. As I've said, even though I am defeated, in a way I win, because before I die, I get one last shot in and manage to kill one of the protagonists of the film. And that scene of him coughing up blood as he's dying, there's quite a funny story behind that, because Ross brought some sachets of tomato ketchup with him to do this scene, and in order to simulate him coughing up blood and dying, he practically force fed himself all of this tomato sauce. He kept uh, putting all of this tomato sauce in his mouth to cough up the blood, but we had to do several takes of it to try and make it convincing, and every time we had to cut between each take, he had to put more and more ketchup in his mouth to simulate the blood. And I just remember once we finally got all those shots in, he just said, "I am never eating tomato ketchup ever again." Because he just had too much of it to do this scene. I don't know whether he adhered to that or whether he's gotten over that PTSD of tomato ketchup and if he's eating ketchup again nowadays, but that was quite a humorous behind the scenes story behind what is quite a tragic ending scene. And now for the final reflections part of the review, in which I just look back on the project in general. Brothers in Arms, it was an adrenaline rush. It was just so much fun. It was really great, and all three of us pulled out all the stops, especially in the post-production, Ross putting all of this cinematic music in, and I think this film has the most special effects out of all the other films I've done. It's definitely got the most explosions. We just pulled out all the stops to make it as big and explosive as possible. And I do recall this film with very fond memories. It was very humbling and heartwarming to know that there was a guy from England, he saw my work, and whenever he took a holiday to come here to Northern Ireland, he wanted to be in my movie because he saw my other stuff, and he says, "I want to be in Diamond Dave's movie," so that really touched my heart a lot. It was very nice to know that Moen really was ecstatic to be in this. I don't know if he had any acting experience prior to being in this film. Well, I'm assuming he probably did because he studied film at university along with Ross, so he must have done. But anyway, I think he did a very good job in this film. He was good at playing this hardened hero, and he brought a lot of his own unique things to his character. He wanted to wear this bandana over his head and sort of have that rugged, tough guy look. And he, as you can see in the film, he was clearly enjoying himself, enjoying making it, and it's very complimentary to know that someone likes my work so much that they wanted to be in the film, and they had a good time being in one of my projects. And Moen has since gone on to do really big things now. He's made some feature films, and I think he's also been involved at the Cannes Film Festival, which is a very prestigious film festival. So, Moen, if you're listening, and if or when you do make it in Hollywood and become a success, remember that Diamond Dave film that you were in back in 2012? I joke. So yes, that was a lot of fun as well, and this I think the ending to this film, that it was sort of a sad, melancholic ending, was kind of apropos, because this was the last film that myself and Ross McConaughey made together. due to real life circumstances, because this was summer of 2012 and he was about to go back to England to do his final year of university, and I myself was in college at the time as well, so we both were going back to college. I would stay in Northern Ireland because I studied at my local college, but Ross went back to England to finish his studies and graduate. And shortly after he finished university and graduated, Ross found paid employment. So, realistically and practically speaking, he could no longer help me make my films because that's life. People move on, things change, and due to circumstances, people have to, go on and do new things. And given that soon after he finished university, he soon got a job, he just practically and realistically could no longer help make more films with me. But I feel that we ended our collaboration on a high note. We really did. For 3 consecutive years between 2010 and 2012, myself and Ross made some very good films, and it's a period of on my channel, my YouTube channel, that period of time that I look back with fond memories because of the things me and Ross managed to achieve together. So, like I said, we, with Brothers in Arms, we ended our filmmaking collaboration on a high note. As for me, well, I was going back to college to do my final year of film studies too, and I would continue over the next couple of years to clock out new content and make new films. But it would be a few more years before I would find a new guy with the camera and editing skills to help me fulfill my more ambitious scripts. So for the next couple of years, it would be sort of a back to basics thing. I would continue making films on my own, and it would be until 2016 that I would start making really big things again when I found a new guy to help me. But that is for another retrospective. So that was Brothers in Arms. I hope you enjoyed this review. If you liked it, do subscribe to my channel and follow me on Twitter for new content. Stay tuned next time when I will be reviewing my 2013 film The Chase. Take care and be lucky.